There's something deeply wrong about a knight's armor just lying on the floor, not damaged in battle, not displayed with honor, just abandoned, cast aside like a burden too heavy to bear. In Leighton's 1883 painting Duty, we witness something that shouldn't exist: a knight who won't pick up his armor. A warrior paralyzed by a choice that has no right answer. But here's what makes this painting terrifying. It's not about the Middle Ages at all. At first glance, we see a domestic medieval scene. A knight in richly embroidered robes sits on a simple wooden bench. His wife, dressed in ornate medieval costume, leans toward him with obvious concern. Their young son stands to the right, holding a sword with an unsettling readiness. The interior is meticulously detailed: carved wooden furniture, period-appropriate textiles, the warm glow of filtered light through unseen windows. Everything Leighton painted carries the weight of obsessive historical accuracy. The embroidery patterns, the fabric folds, even the wood grain, all rendered with what one critic called almost photographic precision. It appears to be a moment of family intimacy, a private scene of medieval life. But then you notice the armor. Look at where the armor lies, not hung with care, not being polished by servants. It's been thrown down, discarded, in the very space where this family lives. In medieval society, a knight's armor was sacred. It represented his identity, his purpose, his covenant with God and King. To see it on the floor is like seeing a priest's vestments in the mud. But look closer at the knight's face. This isn't anger. It's not determination. It's something far more disturbing: complete spiritual collapse. His shoulders curve inward, his hands rest uselessly on his thighs, his gaze fixes on nothing. The wife's gesture suddenly takes on new meaning. She's not just concerned, she's desperate. Her body language suggests she's done this before, perhaps many times. She knows the script, but keeps performing it anyway. And the son? Notice how he doesn't look at his father. He stares past him, already seeing a future where he too will sit on this bench with his own armor on the floor. To understand this painting's true darkness, we need to excavate its real context. Victorian England, the height of empire. Edmund Blair Leighton wasn't painting medieval history, he was painting Victorian anxiety, dressed in prettier clothes. Born in 1852, Leighton specialized in what Victorians called costume pieces, historical scenes that let them process contemporary traumas at a safe distance. But here's the sinister truth. While Leighton painted this serene domestic scene, actual Victorian men were leaving actual Victorian families to die in colonial wars. Between 1872 and 1899, Britain fought 35 major military campaigns: Afghanistan, Sudan, Burma, South Africa. The Victorian concept of duty was a psychological weapon. Men were programmed from birth to believe that personal happiness was selfishness, that true masculinity meant subordinating every human desire to abstract concepts like empire and honor. Leighton himself was trapped in this system. Despite exhibiting at the Royal Academy for 42 years, creating over 300 paintings, he was never made an academician. He remained what critics called a prominent outsider, successful enough to keep painting, never accepted enough to truly belong. But here's what makes this more disturbing. Actual medieval knights served only 40 days a year. The chivalric code was openly acknowledged as impossible to follow. Medieval warfare was pragmatic, brutal, economically motivated. The Victorians weren't recreating the Middle Ages. They were inventing a past that never existed to justify a present that was becoming unbearable. Every object in this painting is a loaded weapon. The armor, not just military equipment, it's masculinity itself. Lying on the floor, it represents every expectation, every obligation, every generational demand that crushes men into shapes that fit society's needs. The knight can't wear it, but he can't destroy it either. The wife's position. She leans in from the left, traditionally the sinister side in medieval iconography. Her emotional appeal is positioned as something suspect, potentially weakening. Victorian viewers would read this as the eternal feminine trying to soften necessary masculine resolve. The son's sword. He holds it with casual competence, but notice it's already drawn. The next generation doesn't get to choose whether to be armed. Violence is inherited like eye color. The knight's robes. Heavily embroidered, expensive, constraining. Even without armor, he's wrapped in layers of social expectation. The richness of the fabric tells us he has everything to lose: wealth, status, family, and still cannot move. The light source. Coming from the left, illuminating the wife and son, but leaving the knight partially in shadow. He exists between two worlds, the domestic light and the darkness that calls him to duty. But there's something else, something Leighton hid in plain sight. Look at the knight's hands. Really look at them. They're not clenched in determination. They're not reaching for the armor. They're completely, terrifyingly still. This is the painting's darkest revelation. The knight has already made his choice. He made it before we arrived. The paralysis we're witnessing isn't indecision. It's the aftermath of decision. He knows he will pick up the armor. He knows he will leave. He knows his son will watch him go and learn that this is what men do. The tragedy isn't that he's torn between duty and love. The tragedy is that there was never really a choice at all. The system that created knights, that created Victorian soldiers, that creates modern warriors, it doesn't allow for choice. It only allows for the performance of choosing. Leighton painted this moment of performed hesitation because it's the only humanity the system permits. The knight can sit for a moment, can appear to struggle, can let his wife perform her concern and his son perform his readiness. But the armor will be picked up. The duty will be performed. The cycle will continue. We, the viewers, become complicit witnesses to this eternal moment. We watch this family frozen in their roles, and we recognize them. The knight is every person who's ever said, "I have no choice." The wife is everyone who's ever had to accept an unacceptable loss. The son is every child who's learned that growing up means accepting systems you never chose. The painting forces us to ask, what is duty really? Is it noble obligation or sophisticated slavery? Does society create these concepts to maintain order or to manufacture consent for its cruelties? When we call something duty, are we honoring necessity or just decorating oppression? Today, we've replaced armor with uniforms, military, corporate, social. We still tell ourselves that duty transcends personal happiness. We still perform the ritual of reluctant acceptance. We still pass these performances to our children as inheritance. Every deployment, every mandatory overtime, every necessary sacrifice, they all happen in rooms like this, with families arranged in similar positions, playing out the same ancient drama. 17 years after painting Duty, Leighton created Godspeed, showing the same scene but at the moment of departure. The knight is mounted, armored, ready. The lady ties a favor to his arm. Everyone performs their role perfectly. But Duty shows us what Godspeed conceals, the private horror before the public performance. Perhaps the real question isn't whether the knight will pick up his armor. Perhaps it's whether we will ever learn to leave ours on the floor. The painting ends where it begins, with armor abandoned, a choice unmade, a moment frozen between what we want and what the world demands. Leighton couldn't resolve this tension in 1883. We can't resolve it now. The armor waits. It always waits. And somewhere, in every generation, someone sits exactly where that knight sits, knowing that soon, too soon, they will stand.